Welcome to part 1 of the setup analysis featuring the head Metallix 2, and in this racket we've got it strung up with Signum Pro Firestorm 1.30. So it's a string that's featured a few times on this channel, and for good reason. It's very well balanced, and so I'm hoping that the racket can further amplify some of the strengths of the string, namely the length control, and hopefully we can increase our racket head speed as a result of that. But yeah, we'll get into some of the strengths, some of the weaknesses, and then we will look at some ways that potentially we could improve the setup even further. So we'll start off with the strengths, and like I said, the length control again is on another level to pretty much any setup that we've tested at Cupenia Tennis, and as a result we've got access to a few more aggressive strategies, like playing a little bit lower over the net on average, so decreasing our margin for error, just because the length control offsets the increased aggression in terms of shot selection. Therefore, in neutral rallies, I was able to take the ascendancy more often than I have been with previous setups, where I would have had to maintain a neutral position because of the high shot speed and spin coming off of that setup. That isn't so much of an issue with the Metallix 2, with the Signum Pro Firestorm. And to go into a little bit more detail into areas of the court where I faced a little bit of trouble. So for example, my opponent is quite skilled at using angles and shorter lengths at pulling myself into areas of the court I'm uncomfortable with. That is an issue with the previous setups. Because they're so powerful, I wasn't able to neutralize or switch the momentum of the point with one shot, and as a result my options were to neutralize or to stay defensive, which obviously kept him in the ascendancy, kept the pressure on myself, and the percentages not in my favor. However, with this setup, because we've got that increase in length control, I was able, on occasion when I got my footing correct, to switch the momentum of the point with one shot. And that's really important, because now we've got 3 options and it keeps him guessing. So whereas with the previous setups, he knows that I've got 2 options. He can kind of cheat a little bit and maybe step inside of the court, knowing now that I've got the option to drive a ground stroke aggressively deep or cross court with sharp angles. Now he can't cheat and step inside the forecourt as much as perhaps he would like, especially if he's trying to maintain those percentages in his favor. So as I always say, access to different options really important, and it's one of the most important factors when assessing a setup and its effectiveness. Moving on to the final strength, and I'm going to mention the height control now. It's not outstanding, but I thought, considering the increase in the deflection, which usually signals a decrease in the height and line control, this setup managed to maintain at least playability in that department and allowed the length control to really shine. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have been able to utilize less margin for error over the net as a consistent attacking strategy. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that these strings are freshly strung, so during this practice match they're probably about an hour to 90 minutes old, and so the true tension loss hasn't taken place yet. But we will see in future test matches and in part 2 of this setup analysis the real effect of the tension maintenance, whether it causes a decrease in the height and line control to a point where I'm unable to use as many attacking strategies as I have been in the beginning of this setup. But yeah, that's for a later date. So with the freshly strung Firestorm, height control and line control is not an issue, and it allows the strengths of the string to shine through. Moving on to some of the weaknesses, I'm going to start off with the level of spin that I was able to apply on the ball being a lot less than I was desiring. And this is more of an issue because with this low swing weight and the high racket head speed that I expect from it, I was looking for that to provide us with the amount of spin necessary to make the ball kick for our serves, to make the ball dip for our aggressive ground strokes. But I'm not getting that that level of RPMs or anywhere near it, really, to be honest. And while the shots are consistent, they could be a lot more effective if I was able to apply spin onto the ball along with the low trajectory and pace that I was able to consistently execute. So the immediate fix, I guess, for something like this would be an increase in the swing weight. That would, in theory, improve the plow through, and so the racket head speed loss on impact would be diminished a little. But of course, I'm apprehensive to do so because this increases the shot speed as well, and so it's a little bit unusual in that it increases length control and decreases length control at the same time. It's sort of like getting the balance correct, which requires a lot of testing, and yeah, I'm just apprehensive to do so at the moment. I feel like there may be other ways we'd be able to increase the amount of spin without modifying the weight of the racket. And on the string itself, this is an issue I found as we decrease the stiffness of the string and we get into the softer territory of the scale. We do lose shot speed, but also at the same time we lose shot spin. So our length control goes up, as does the comfort. However, the amount of spin we can apply on the ball does decrease, and so players that utilize that as a big part of their attacking arsenal are going to find their weapons neutralized. And yeah, it's a bit of a puzzle. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do about the spin issue at the moment. I'll have to have a think about it, and in the future previews or videos, I'll let everyone know what's on my mind, what I plan to do with the setup. But yeah, that was the weaknesses. There was one more. While these serves were consistent and they were difficult to attack, they weren't getting as many 3 points as I would like. And again, that ties in a lot to the amount of spin I could apply to the ball. So they're related again. But also, while the length control, we've been singing its praises the whole video, that line control over the serve is not as pinpoint as I would like. It's nowhere near, in fact, and hitting a lot of serves right in the slot, so not on the tee, not at the body, like it kind of in the middle where the opponent doesn't have to move, and it's a good width where they can just get their racket on the ball, and you know, if they're anticipating the serve's going to be there, they could even be aggressive on that shot. I haven't faced someone who's able to do that consistently yet, but it is a fear of mine. If they start realizing I'm not serving into the corners as much as I should be, opponents might start formulating strategies to try and take advantage of the predictability. So yeah, that would be one of the main weaknesses. Again, the serve placement. It's something, again, I'm actively trying to fix, but it's a puzzle. So if I fix that, it tends to have a negative effect elsewhere. We try and get it correctly balanced. But yeah, that's going to be it for this analysis of the setup, because I still have part 2. So before any changes, I have to do my final analysis, which will be indoors. So different conditions, that will be even more of a test for the serve, as the indoor air is a little bit thinner, and so therefore our length control decreases as the ball travels further and faster through thinner air. That'll be an interesting test, and I will update you all as soon as I can. So that will bring us to the end of part 1 of this setup analysis. A good test, I thought, overall. A quick recap of the strengths. The length control is about as good as I've tested on this channel by some margin, I would say, and coupled that with the height control being more than adequate, I was able to use attacking strategies that I haven't had access to with previous setups. Of course, I'm going to keep an eye on that as the tension decreases, as we play a little bit more. Flat shots were consistent and effective, and also we were able to neutralize and attack from shots where my opponent would draw me forward into the forecourt against kind of my will, or when he was using short angles as a strategy to put me in uncomfortable positions. I was able to switch the momentum of the point with a higher degree of effectiveness than I have with previous setups. And on to a quick recap of the weaknesses. Again, not as much spin as I was expecting, especially with a racket that has such a low swing rate and a high swing speed. That decrease in the stiffness of the string has had a detrimental effect on the amount of spin I can apply on the ball and shot speed, which does mean the length control is there, but pros and cons. So that's something I'm going to try and counter. We'll have a think about that. And also the serve placement, particularly the line placement, I wasn't too happy with. I'm not getting close enough to the actual service lines in order to draw my opponent away from their comfortable returning position, or just to get 3 points and aces. Not enough for my liking. So again, something that I would like to address. And that will bring us to the end of this analysis. Thank you all for watching and listening. I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, it might be worth checking out the other content on this channel and staying tuned for future videos coming out soon. So until then, hopefully I'll see you all there. And everyone, take care.